once again, to all you here, thank you for being here with us and the live part of our meeting here. And for you out there in internet land, Facebook, YouTube, thanks for tuning in with us to another live meeting here on Saturday Night Live Life Recovery Ministry. We're here to help you to deal with stuff in your life, whatever that stuff is. Now, that's not a claim that we're experts, but we're interested in helping you. And I believe with God's help and our help, we can all make things better. How about that? Is that a good statement?
Yes, sir.
Hello. And so, the truth is that none of us can heal alone. And step 2 is talking about, and that's what we're dealing with tonight. And we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. And to help us to move from insanity to sanity, the person that helped us to get to insanity was primarily ourselves. Would you agree with that? So if we keep using the same help that we've always had, we're going to get the same thing we always got. That's insanity. And that, in fact, Einstein happened to say something along the same line. So we really need some outside help. And when we get good enough to really observe ourselves from the observer perspective, now I know that may sound kind of strange, but when we gain the ability to see ourselves, to observe ourselves from that healthy perspective, and we all have it in there, if we'll allow ourselves to get in touch with it, and that healthy perspective, our spirit, our consciousness, or whatever you want to, whatever title you want to give it, the self, in psychology talk about, it's still that spiritual nature that God's given us. He will lead us, or it will lead us into truth. And what we need to do to really have a better life is to have truth in our life. Would you agree with that? So I did not get fully prepared because I didn't bring all my papers over here, but I'll get them here in a minute. Well, then once you get them for me, they're right there in my Bible, and hand them to me. And while you're doing that, I'm going to talk about these bracelets. Just pull, there should be, just pull them right out and hand them to me. We have the bracelets. They are to celebrate clean time. Thank you, Willie. They're to mark whatever it is that you're celebrating, whether it's drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex addiction, eating, violence, pornography, gambling. There's no way to name them all, right? But you know yours. At least if you know you got a problem, you have a pretty good idea what yours is, right? And that's really the first step of recovery is to be aware, right? Because you can't fix something that you're not aware of. But back to the bracelets. Excuse me. We have white bracelets for just today, up to 30 days. We have orange bracelets for 30 days, green bracelets for 60 days, maroon for 90, blue for 6 months, yellow for 9 months, glow in the dark is 1 year, gray 18 months, black 2 years, silver 5 years, and gold for 10 years or more. So anybody need a bracelet tonight? If you out there in internet land need one, either come to a meeting or get in touch with us. We'll do our best to get one to you. Anybody in? Okay, all right. One of the rules of Saturday Night Live, and one of the rules that I try to live by is not to have too many rules. Now, in the Old Testament, I think they had they had a ton of rules. It kind of depends on which things you look at. Some record over 500, some more than that. But Jesus only really had 2 rules. And that's love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy spirit, and love thy neighbor as yourself. And so I like him because he tries to keep it simple. So that's pretty simple. Two rules is a whole lot better than 500 or 10. 10's not too bad compared to 500, but nobody can live to 10 anyway, right? Now, the closer you get to it, the better off you'll be. I'm not disagreeing there, but these two are so crucial in our life. So tonight we're going to be, as I said, talking about step 2 because we're in February, and Robert hasn't shared in a long time. He's going to be sharing grandiose thinking. Yes, grandiose thinking. That's a very interesting subject, and it could go really anywhere. And with Robert, there's no telling, right? Yeah. The only one more risky than you is Tommy. Yeah. So anyway, and so we're going to be talking about grandiose thinking. We're going to be coming out of the section of the Bible of Daniel 4:19 through 33, talking about King Nebuchadnezzar. And I'm going to be talking about King Nebuchadnezzar and a spiritual reset, okay, spiritual life reset. And whether we realize it or not, those resets occur in our life, and they're crucial because we seem to get trapped going one direction, and that's usually in the wrong direction. Would you agree with that? And what we need to do is have a reset where we turn it around, and thank God we have the opportunity to do that. And you say, well, I've already had one. Well, the thing of it is we get more than one because most of us are, I'll say it nicely, strong-willed. Anybody know what I'm talking about, strong-willed? Well, I'll just put it in your vernacular, hard-headed, stubborn. How about that? So, but that's the kind of way we are. And God made us that way for a reason, but it's for a good reason, even though we think it's maybe a bad reason, but God put us that way for a reason. So Robert's going to be talking to us about step 2, and then we're going to have a reflection from John. But John, that's not John back here, is it? That's not John. No. John and Willie. So, and if anybody else has a reflection they'd like to share in the reflection time, we'll go with that. So tonight, I've got a few quotes, not as many as we normally do, but I'm going to, here's a couple. This is Joseph Campbell, and this is a very insightful quote for me anyway. And one of his quotes is this: "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." You get it, Twilight Zone? Yeah. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The fear holds us back, and what it's holding us back from is from what we need to address in our life to make ourselves better, generally speaking. And this is what Joseph Campbell was talking about. The quote popped into my mind, and this is Mark Aurelius. You said you like Mark Aurelius. He said that, I just heard the quote about the quote. I mean, I've read his quote. The object that hinders the way is the way. I can't think of the young man's name that's restated that, and it's the object is the way. So the thing that hinders us from getting where we need to go is actually the way. Einstein said that in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Have you ever thought about that one before? In the middle of difficulties lie opportunity. That's where all your opportunity is. Can that be true? Well, if we tie that with Joseph Campbell, and he said, in the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Did all that help that any at all? Did it help clear anything up there? Socrates says, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I have some other quotes. Hopefully I'll get to them later towards the end of the meeting. But anyway, at least that gave you a little bit of idea. Some good stuff to think about. Let me read one over here. We're talking about grandiose thinking, and some of these are grandiose thinkings, and I really like this because it's only God can restore us to sanity, because grandiose thinking is insanity, right? That's one way of putting it. Dr. Henry Cloud, anybody familiar with Dr. Henry Cloud? He's a really good Christian author. He says, beware of anyone who has never failed, comma, or seem to have no faults. This is Dr. Henry Cloud. He says, too good to be true usually is. Perfection hides something. What do you think about that? That's Dr. Henry Cloud. He's a clinical psychologist. So, all right, we're ready for the steps. We're ready for Heather. We're standing here waiting on Heather. We're here ready to go, waiting on Heather.
Good evening.
Slowly and clear.
Slowly and clearly, all right. All right. We admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. I know nothing good lives in me. I want to do.
You need to speak out a little bit more, because I'm having a hard time understanding you. Of course, my ears are a little clogged. You guys hear it all right? Okay. Well, maybe my bad, but I can't hear you.
All right. I want to do what is right, but I can't. Step 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Better.
God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. Step 3. We made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. Dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind He will find acceptable. Step 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Let us test and examine our ways. Let us turn back to the Lord. Step 5. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Humble yourself before the Lord, and He will lift you up in honor. Step 7. We humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. If we confess our sins to Him, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all wickedness. Step 8. We made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. Step 9. We made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. If you're presenting a sacrifice at the altar and someone has something against you, leave your sacrifice there at the altar and go and be reconciled to that person. Then come and offer your sacrifice to God. 10. We continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. If you think you are standing strong, be careful not to fall. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. Devote yourself to prayer with an alert mind and a thankful heart. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path and be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Come on in here, Robert. Yeah, Robert's itching and ready to go.
All right.
Welcome, Robert.
Robert.
Waiting on Robert.
My name's Robert, and I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. And is this okay?
Nope. No, we're gonna pull you up. Sorry, my fault.
Okay. How's that? That work? No? How about that? Okay. I don't like talking into one of these things. I'm just going to tell you straight up. Grandiose thinking with me covered a lot of ground. I never got as bad as what Nebuchadnezzar did by having people worship him. And he honestly believed in his own mind that he was a god. He really did. Until Daniel told him what the Lord told him. And he said, this is what's going to happen. And he wound up waking up one day, and there he was out there in the fields grazing with the wild animals and stuff, you know. And he'd never believed it, but he looked up into the heavens and he asked God for help, and God come down and helped him, and he got back everything that he had plus. Grandiose thinking, I had become a liar, a con artist, a thief, everything that was unimaginable. There wasn't anything that I wouldn't do to get my way. And that's a horrible way to live your life, having to be in control of everything that's around you so that nobody can get over on you before you get over on them. And I mean, it is a constant battle. I wound up kind of like Nebuchadnezzar. I wound up with nothing. I was out there in the streets, didn't have anything. But one day God had a different idea about it all. And I'm still standing here almost 5 years later. Grandiose thinking, it said, when in my addiction, in what ways did I display that belief? I displayed the belief that I was only accountable to myself. Well, I was just accountable to myself. You know, I was the one that had the money in my pocket. I was the one that was going to go get more, you know. And if I didn't have it, I'd go steal it somewhere or try to. How have I tried to have power over the events, outcomes, and people in my life? There wasn't one person that I came in contact with that I didn't hurt. And I was only going to hurt myself in this process. That was the way I lived my life. It was only hurting me. And it turned out to be the biggest mess I've ever gotten myself into. It says, in what ways did I show that I forgot that God was the ultimately in control? Well, he was always in control. He took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself, living out there like I was. I don't know how many times that I should have been dead, more times than I can remember, I'm sure. But he saw different. He knew that one day there's going to come to where all this bad thinking, letting him take care of me instead of me trying to take care of myself. I can't take care of myself. I still can't. I'm 70 years old. I still can't take care of myself. I have to have him. I got to have his help every day. It says, how have I avoided acceptance of God's power over my life? Well, in the past, I always knew that there was a God that didn't care. I was going to do it my way or die trying. And that almost killed me. Let's go back to the first one, when in my addiction. Anybody have any comment on that or anything? And in what ways did I display the belief that I was only accountable to myself? Nobody? How have I tried to have power over the events, outcomes, and people in my life? Does anybody have any comment on that?
Repeat the question, please.
Pardon me?
Will you repeat the last one you just did?
This says, how have I tried to have power over the events, outcomes, and people in my life?
I would try to manipulate people, manipulate the situation, not tell the truth about it, just so I could get my way.
Oh,
To
yeah.
feel like I had power, I had control over the situation altogether. I wanted it to go how I wanted it to go, even if the result was the same of other people's
Mhm.
wantings. I had to manipulate it somehow or self-sabotage it to
Mhm.
get my way, to control
Absolutely.
power for me. But it always resulted in suffering, honestly,
That's true.
until I did give up my powerlessness and that control. I
Mhm.
wanted God to have control instead of me, not be a control freak.
The only thing that I have to be in control of is asking God for forgiveness when I know that I've done something stupid, or to have His help come into my life every morning that I wake up. And I thank Him for every morning that I get to wake up.
Yeah.
You know, every morning. That to me, Grandma used to call that living on borrowed time. You know, I mean, she was old fashioned, and I guess so am I. Learned a lot from that old gal. A lot of difference between right and wrong, which I avoided at all costs because I wanted to do what I wanted to.
Can I ask Courtney a question? Courtney, you were talking about self-sabotage. Could you expound on that?
I set myself up for way high expectations to where I let myself down, and that self-sabotaging, when my expectations exceed what honestly I'm capable of. Did I do that? You know, I'm just gonna do this little bit. No, it's all in front of me. I self-sabotage my own thinking, my own,
And why do you think we do that to ourselves?
it's a character defect. Because we're insane. I was insane.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. It's cause of ego. You know, I'd lie to you in a heartbeat because I was bigger than you. Not in size, but because my brain was bigger than you. I could outthink you, you know. Well, that turned out real well for me in the end.
And that lifestyle of disease and illness, and it's part of the life. But whenever I figured out there's more to life than that, is when I started not wanting that self-sabotage. I didn't want manipulation. I didn't want those negative behaviors in my life anymore, because I realized that there is a new way of life.
There sure is. I can't count the times that in the almost 5 years that I've been clean, that I've honestly, without a doubt in my heart or in my mind, that I told the exact truth and how that turned out for me. And it's always turned out to be super cool.
Yeah.
You know, because I told the truth. I didn't have to lie to get around something or try to remember the lie I told you before. It was the God's honest truth, and it worked out really well. So I guess that the old story goes, you know, I mean, that honesty is the best policy by all means. Yeah.
I would avoid court or anybody that I thought may have been some kind of authority figure. I'd only go places to where I could get by with people would co-sign my BS, and you know, to be honest, the drugs were just a way to make me lie to myself and manipulate me into thinking I was some kind of a god. Because when the drugs left, I was really empty and had to search for what, I mean, because when I went to NA, they said you had to have a higher power. This higher power had to be carrying and more power than my disease. And they can say whatever they want, but you know, I have a hard time with some of the things they say. But the truth is, a lot like you, I'm kind of like a little smarter than thinking the doorknob is smarter than me. And if it's stronger than my disease and I'm not, I mean, that just don't make sense.
Right.
To me.
Yeah.
So it was very obvious on where I wanted to go with it. The problem I had, however, was once you took the idealization that I was God way, and the reality set in, then I seen just how low I really was. It made me really feel like I was not good enough for the God in which I knew was already existed. So
What's that last statement?
it felt like I felt like I wasn't good enough for the God I knew that already existed.
Okay, the God, is that what you said, the God?
The God,
Okay,
yes.
the God, okay.
Yeah.
I just want, maybe I'm having a tough time hearing, but I didn't want to miss it.
Definitely not a God. There's a lot of gods
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, but there's only one, the God.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one.
But I just wanted to hear it.
Yeah, so my point is when I look at my life today and where I was, the biggest difference is the way I try to manipulate the situations around me. Fix, manage, and control has turned into a positive instead of a negative, because it's come naturally. I always wanted to fix the situation, but generally so I could get something out of it. I'd like to manage the situation so I knew where I stood with everything. And,
Yeah.
you know, now I try to rely on God to fix it and manage me instead of the people around me, I guess is what I'd say. That would be the difference for me.
Yeah, once you get to thinking that, you're the smartest thing on this planet, and nothing can do you any harm, I got news for you. You're heading for a really bad downfall. And I don't know. I mean, I'm tickled to death the way that I live now. I don't have any qualms about today. I'm sure that there was something that come up on me that I thought about or I've seen or something that wasn't just exactly up to snuff. But before I go to bed tonight, I'll ask God for forgiveness if I did do something stupid and then try to go on for the next day. I have long-term plans, but they're not as important as today's plan. Not as important as today's plans. We've got one more of these to go, I think. It said, how have I avoided acceptance of God's power over my life? I was too powerful for that. I had too much going for me, Why would I want to listen to God when I had it going on anyway? Or thought I did. I didn't have nothing but a big goose egg. And that's the way I feel today. I told a drug and alcohol counselor one time that I had wasted so many years of being drunk and high and not remembering and didn't really care even if I could remember or not. And he said, not 1 minute of those years were wasted. He said, turn them around and use them for some kind of good. Maybe somebody, if only one person would listen and get something out of each one of us is something what we said, then everything that I've done would be worthwhile. Everything would be, if I could just help one person. And that's all God asked us to do is just our best. He doesn't expect more than what we're capable of doing. He knows better than that because we're humans. And like I said before, I'm just glad to be where I'm at. And thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.
And ladies.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
You're right.
Just one thing we know. He's tall.
Yes.
Is that better?
Better.
Okay. One thing everyone in this room has in common, we all fell off that ladder because of our thinking. And if you don't think you fell off, you're falling now because that's your grandiose thinking. At least when you hit down, you got one way to look up. Look up, there's God. You need him. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Roger.
I
Yeah,
know.
I didn't know who you are.
Huh?
Yeah, I didn't know who you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, be here next week? Oh, no, I'm not up next week. 2 weeks. If you show up next week, I'll introduce myself.
Hi, I'm Willie. Or Will. But actually, I'm Doug. How about that? How about that? Excuse me? Thanks, everybody, and thanks for your comments. I have a couple things I want to go over the questions. And, Will, you were talking about your grandiose thinking and when you've realized where you were, you basically then felt that you weren't acceptable then to God. Is that correct? Is that
Right.
okay? And that's what I was trying to hear, and I was struggling hearing. Sorry. And what that normally is then when you're in that place, you feel overwhelmed, depressed. You feel like you become nihilistic, means you're hopeless, and also then potentially suicidal, potentially, or you could be, and because you are hopeless. Duh, right? And so when we get into that place, it does help us to come into that reality. Now, Nebuchadnezzar had to, he was warned. Is this working all right, or I just can't hear? Is that good, all right? Okay, good. All right, if you say it's good, it's good. Nebuchadnezzar, he was warned, and by his own dream that he had. God gave him a dream, and then he searched for the interpretation, and none of his regular guys was able to give him the interpretation. So he somehow came up with Daniel or Belshazzar, okay, and Belshazzar, which was Daniel, was able to give him the interpretation. And basically, a shortened version of this is the dream is like a tree, and the tree is going to be cut down, and they're going to take all the limbs off of it. They're going to scatter all the fruit. They're going to run away all the wildlife. They're going to make all the good stuff basically be scattered and somewhat disappear. And they're going to, but they're not going to tear out the stump, and they're not going to tear out the roots, and they're going to cap it. And I didn't look up exactly why the iron and copper, but I'm sure there's some significance there, but I didn't look that up, truthfully. And even though it was a question of mine. And then the next story is he lost his mind. And this was a guy, let's set up, this is the most powerful guy in the entire world, according to what the scripture said there. He had turned that country into being extremely wealthy, and it was abundance, okay, extreme abundance, because of his insight, his intellect, and so he got rather haughty, which would be easy to do, right? You see that happen all the time with people that find fame and success, right? They come from nowhere, and then they flash up, and I'm not trying to hold that away from them, but it's just extremely dangerous because you've never been there before, and now you're overwhelmed with stuff. And do you know how you operate when you're overwhelmed? Okay, and your choices become unreal because you have unlimited choices at that place. You know what I mean? You have millions and billions of more choices than you ever had before, and that messes your mind up. It causes you to be disaltered in emotional state.
Disaltered, explain more.
Do what?
Explain that a little deeper, disaltered.
Disaltered? In other words, become moving from an orderly, saneful way of life into an disordered, insane, chaotic way of life. Is that good? Anybody can make that any clearer? I'm open. Does that sound about right? And that's one of the things about all of us. we've been plunged into this chaotic world, because it is a chaotic world, right? And didn't used to be. There was a time that it wasn't, right? But then it got shifted, and that's the way that it is. But God had a plan to help us to be in this world, but not necessarily of this world. Okay, to help us to be self-regulated by His presence, by peace. Does that make sense? Instead of being picked up in the chaotic tornado and getting spun out of control. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Being spun out of control. All right. All right. You know, you're set on your trigger. You know what they say, hair triggers. You know what a hair trigger is? That's it. You just have to barely kind of bump it and it'll shoot. Okay. And you're emotionally charged to the place that you're just barely able to control yourself from exploding because you're on a hair trigger. And then just one thing, it doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's real or if it's imagined, can set you off. And once you get set off with that much of a charge underneath you, emotionally charged, anybody can tell me what happens? They explode. And then see, when there's an explosion, when that force comes up, you feel immediate release, but the devastation is enormous. And you don't like it, you hate it, but then you have to start cleaning up all your crap that you scattered all over the place and all the harm that you did in the midst. And it's hard. And it's really hard. But that's part of that. So what's the answer, right? What's the answer? Well, the answer was that God gave Nebuchadnezzar an opportunity to get his life in a regulated state instead of being overwhelmed in his own grandiosity. He got overwhelmed, okay, because it was good and he was doing great. So we think, I got it. Everybody ought to worship me. Right? So, how did that work out for you? You were right. You did come again. Yes. And now the thing of it is, the rest of the story is Nebuchadnezzar spent some processing time. Okay? And he worked through his stuff. He moved from insanity to sanity. And when his mind cleared and he realized that I'm going to use your word, sabotaged himself, right? Okay? Because I'm too big to fail. I'm bigger than God. He didn't say it like that, but that's his actions. And when we're in that place that Will was talking about earlier, that low state of nihilistic framework, we don't like it. We hate it. We want to avoid that. And the way that we learn to cope with that, to deal with that in our life is to, come on. Do what? No, we didn't turn to the Lord. Well, it was the Lord, but it wasn't the Lord. Do what? Yeah, we went to our coping mechanisms. We went to our substances. We went to whatever would relieve us from the pain of the present to get us into the pleasure, because our amygdala says avoid pain, seek pleasure. Avoid pain, seek pleasure. That helps you to survive, but it didn't help you to live a healthy life. Oftentimes it sends you down the road to hell. Would you agree with that? Do what?
Yeah, I was doing that, I get so pressured out and with everything that I would drink because I felt so much pressure. I felt like a pressure cooker that was going to explode.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Very good, very good. And see that, but that's not just for you. That's for all of us. There's been times in my life I thought, this right here is the reason why people use drugs. What the pressure that I was under, the intense, you know, and yeah, that's a way to go, but it's not the way to go, right? I could go there, but we know if when we're in our sane mind, because when we're in that pressure state, we're not in our sane mind. When we're in our sane mind, we know that that's not the way to go. And let me tell you the rest of the story here on this trip. What happens to people when they've been doing good and they've been trying to do all the right things and they're wrapped up in the doings of it, and there's nothing wrong with all the good things they're doing, but they're to a large degree, and this may sound hard, but they're faking it till they're making it. They're not, and all that's doing is adding more pressure on them, winding it up tighter. Do you know what I'm talking about? I make sure I do the right things before I go see my parole officer or go stand or did blah, 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 you know what I'm talking about, right? And you know what I'm talking about, doing the right things. Because of the wrong things you did, you got to do some other things. Fix the things that need to be helped. Did I say that delicately enough? So, and man, isn't that pressure? Isn't that pressure? That's pressure. And then you live with that sword hanging over you all the time. And we say that's fun. So here we are, and we do that, and then we beat the crap out of ourselves because we did it, because I failed. I messed up. And that's the reason why I tell people when they tell me they've messed up or used or went out or did this or did that or whatever, and I say, well, what did you learn? I'm not there to beat you up.
So what do you do when you do reach that pressure, though? You know, I mean, because it's gonna happen, you know.
It is going to happen.
I'm in a really good space right now.
Yeah,
but I
it's
know
going to happen.
It's gonna happen.
So Heather, what do you do when you reach that place? What do you do to help you? Because see, I can give you some things that I can suggest, but see, that's what relapse protection is all about, is finding out what it is that causes your relapses and figuring out a strategy to deal with those triggers. And I can't do that for you. I can help you, but you have to do it. See, because you have to look into the deep hole, into that abyss of that pain, and find the light down in it. The light is the hope to turn your life around, but you got to deal with the pain, the crap, the reality of the bad stuff. You understand that? Does it make sense? So what do? Is the first step is to realize that you're caught in a cycle. Become aware. Now, I've had people come in and say, well, I just don't want any bad things to happen to me. If everything went good, then I'd have a great life. That's not going to happen. That is what we're talking about today, right? What's that word? I can't hear you. One more time. Grandiose thinking. That's living in a lie. That's living a destructive dream. That's a non-reality. One of my favorite terms is fantasy. Okay? Yeah, fantasy's easier to live in the moment, but there's hell to pay after that. Isn't that true?
Solomon says that in Ecclesiastes.
Yes, he does. And his conclusion is the conclusion of the whole matter is to seek God and obey his commandments, I believe, if that's correct. So the tendency is when we're in that grandiose deal, and it's an exact picture of addictive personality. And that's not just drugs, that's not just alcohol, that can be anything we're addicted to that moves us from this state of feeling like we're a pile of crap to that we're not so bad after all, and that mind altering, that emotional altering system that helps us to shift those states. And that's the reason why it worked really well for the first time or two, and then it worked less and less after that. Am I telling the truth? And it takes more and more to do less and less, and it's taking more out of your life and losing more parts of your life. And it's a trap. So you have to begin to open our eyes. You know, step 12 talks about awakening, but step 1 is talking about, it doesn't say awakening, but it's talking about awakening, okay? Because every part is waking up to some new stuff. How I've been lied to and fooled and deceived, and I'm believing my own crap that I bought into. Yes, maybe they told me that, but I what they told me, and then I bought into it. Now I tell it to myself. Isn't that the truth? Am I getting a little radical now? So Nebuchadnezzar, he turned around, and I want to tell you this. I'll see if it's on this sheet here. I don't think it is, but it's in the scriptures that I read. After he got his mind, he came to himself and said he praised God. He said, and then I'd never seen this before. It said that his advisors and his wise men sought him out. Something about, I don't know what all that means yet, but it does something to me right here. Okay? When you get sane, those people that can take you back into the palace will come and find you. Well, how can they find me if I, because that's the way it works. Now, the good thing of it is, he moves us one step at a time. But God has put people in your lives. Isn't that true? God has put people in your lives to help you to make those little bitty notch moves. When I say notch, I think of the Big Ben clock it has all those notches in it, and it moves just one notch every hour because they're so big. And one notch every 24 hours because it takes 24 hours for it to go around. Maybe it takes 12 hours for it to go around. But it moves slowly. And sometimes our life seems to go slowly. Well, let me ask you a question. I just had this thought. What happened when your life went fast?
Everything got lost. Quick walk.
So some serenity, some peace, things being calm and slow. Yeah. I had a guy talking to me. He was in my office. And the longer we talked, the more he stretched out in his chair. He says, if I go much further, I'm going to be laying in the floor. Because he was feeling a little bit of peace and a little bit of serenity from the hell and torment they've been feeling. I told him he was all right. You can lay in the floor if you want to. But Nebuchadnezzar turned things around. And when he got back doing good, he sent a letter to the entire world blessing the entire world, wanting them to prosper. See, he went from himself to others. You see it? That's when you know you're in the right vein of things, when it's not selfish. Because what are addicts? Selfish. Because it's got to be all about me to survive in that addictive, chaotic world. Isn't that true? I mean, that sounds ugly, but isn't that the fact? As Robert was saying, you know, it's stealing, taking, whatever it is, because I got to feed this thing inside of me. I just had another thought. I didn't know if I want to tell this or not. I think I will. I don't know if it connects or not, but it's an okay story. And I got a couple minutes. Is it all right? Okay. Yeah. Huh? There was a time in my life that I felt like that it was like I carried a hole around in my chest. And it was like a constant vacuum. And it sucked whatever it could into it to try to fill it. And nothing ever would fill it. And I remember getting saved, and it got better. It was like kind of like the hole got smaller. Now, in spiritual easeism, I shouldn't be saying that. Okay, it should be all gone. I should be okay, you know. But that's not the way that it was. Okay, just not. And I really didn't even realize in the beginning that hole was really there, and that thing was sucking all the time. Because I felt empty. I think you get the idea of those feelings of all that. And then it felt like God spoke to me, and he said, that hole's there because you believe it's there. It was a weird statement for me. Okay. Well, if it's there, it's there. And it's been there for so long, it's got to be there. Not because I believe it, it's just because it's there. Isn't that the way we think? Did I say that too quickly? And he said that well, maybe it's not there. Maybe you just think it's there. And I think what happened was I decided I was going to look. See, because you don't look at things you're afraid of. You know, that cave that you're afraid to go into that holds your treasure. Okay. I finally looked at that thing, and it was kind of like, I mean, I see it right now, that it was kind of like it just closed up. Because it wasn't really there. I just believed it was there, and it didn't have to be that way. And I don't know how all that happened. I'm just saying that's my experience, okay? Because we can't always explain all of our experiences. Would you agree with that? And so here, and now that thing is not there, and I know that it's not there, even though I believe that it was there. Did you catch that? I know now it's not there, even though I believed it was there. And that shifted things for me. It moved me. Instead of always living in that emptiness of fear, I had a chance to have another choice. And that's that story. What do you think about that story? Too much? Do what?
I can relate to that.
Okay. So I wrote this down on my paper. And we'll work towards a close here, because I know I've talked quite a while here. But is it okay so far? Tom, is all right so far? Yeah? You haven't fell out of your seat yet or anything, so. It says, I wrote down this. I says, life beats us up. Would you agree or disagree? We either arise to the occasion or we sink to the level of our training. And that's the reason why it's so important for us to begin to renew our mind by the washing of the water of the Word, to change our thinking, to gain a different perspective, to train ourselves in how we're supposed to go, to help ourselves. I remember times realizing I challenged myself by saying I was going to look at what I believe and make sure it lines up with the truth. And I realized most of the things that I believed was a lie. Now, not everything, but just an awful lot. Does that make sense? And I had to be willing to change my thinking. I had to alter my beliefs, because you practice what is true enough, because you know it's true, you know it's in your best interest, and that will alter your beliefs, and that will create a different behavior, a different habit, okay? And that habit will create different feelings, okay? And it'll create different outcomes. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Do you remember? And since I wrote that down, I said, man, that sounds like something maybe I've heard or read before. And so I Googled it, and I found a quote. I found two quotes. And the first one I found was from, it said it was, it was anonymous Navy SEAL. How about that? And the quote was this: under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to the level of your training. That's why we train so hard. Not too bad, right? But they said that quote was tied to another quote, and this was from about 2,500 years ago. And let's see if I can say his name right. Archelaus, I believe that's right, or close. Archelaus. Well, it's with the Greek words there.
It's a great tomato.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And he said something very similar to that. It says, we do not rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. So ancient wisdom, and the scripture says the same thing, that, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. And because truth is truth, whether it's the Navy SEALs or the Greeks, it's truth is truth, and truth is God. And so we just need to recognize this. And this grandiose thinking is we have it. We can fall into it. So what do? As soon as you realize where you are and sanity starts coming back, don't sabotage yourself, right? Help yourself. Have an action plan, what to do, how to do it. Remember the boxer? The boxer, if it doesn't plan on getting knocked down, and he's surprised when he gets knocked down, that he didn't know what to do when he gets knocked down, and he has to figure out why he got knocked down. Wrong answer. Don't figure out why. Just get back up. Don't spend the time to try to figure it out. Have a path already created, so you don't have to create one on the fly. Because when you create one on the fly,
Nothing wrong.
Yeah, so far so good. Let's see, what's Doug gonna do now? I had some quotes. You want some quotes or you wanna go home?
There's more quotes out there, dude.
All right. As soon as I find them. That's one, that's two. No, it's not there. Ah,
If you got another, workbook.
should have. All right. Willie will help you with that. Not right now, though. Marianne Williams says, grandiosity is always a cover for despair. I thought that was a good one. Robert Greene, 48 Laws of something. It's good author. He said, confidence is important, but if it is not based on a realistic appraisal of who you are, it is merely grandiose or smugness. Here's a guy that probably most of you may be familiar with, and his name is Bill W. Anybody familiar with Bill W? He says, nowadays, your brain no longer, nowadays, my brain, Bill W's brain, no longer races compulsively in either grandiose or depression. I have been given a quiet place in bright sunshine. Just if we could get into that quiet place of bright sunshine, and you can do that in the darkness of night, but we can come into that place, even if it, like Dr. Carolyn Leaf would say, a 30-second prayer is better than no prayer at all. If we can start somewhere, that can grow. It's a seed. It'll grow. What do you think about that? I'm not going to read that because that's too much. Charlie Sheen said this. Says, I'm grandiose because I live a grandiose life. Everybody here know Charlie Sheen? He says, I'm not aw shucks. Sounds just like him, right? Yeah. It's his quote. Because I'm gnarly. All the way grandiose, all the way through it, right?
Hold himself.
Full of something. I feel sorry for him. But King Nebuchadnezzar, I'm winding down. King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. God was working on him just as he worked with Paul and Saul when he was Saul. When he worked with King David, he met with King David. God's met with you throughout your lifetime to assist you, to guide you, to help you, to bring you into that place that he can nurture you. Isn't that the truth? If you're not aware of that, you need to become aware of that, because those are your experiences. That's some of your own personal true life evidence that can help you. And Nebuchadnezzar had a spiritual life reset. Apostle Paul had a spiritual life reset when he was on the road to Damascus, but then he had another one when he was in Asia. Okay, and God spoke to him because even though you are extremely bright and spiritual, sometimes you may still need an adjustment and you're unwilling to do it. Hello? Yeah, it's true. Jonah, one of my favorite stories. Jonah, he told God, I'm not going to do what you want to do because you want to save those people at Nineveh. And so I know what you'll do if I go over there and tell them that they're wrong. They'll repent and you'll save them. And I'm not having that. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? But that's exactly what he did. So he tried to run the other direction. But God says, yeah, you can run. Hear it. You can run, but you can't really hide. Where are you going to run to? Because wherever you go, that's where you are. But that's all right. Mom and Daddy, Adam and Eve, did the same exact thing. They ran to try to hide. And where do you hide? The most important part is when he comes looking for you, and he will, you go ahead sooner than later and respond. That's what we're talking about, responding. Would you agree with that? Then Isaiah, I'm gonna stop with this one. Isaiah cracks me up when he just said, God, there's nobody else left. Just let me die and be done with it because it's all washed up. He said, you don't have even a clue what's going on. There's 5,000 of them over there waiting on you. Just because you don't see the sun because of all the stormy clouds doesn't mean it's not there. Because it's there, whether you see it or not. Isn't that true? So, do we have to see it to believe that the sun is there? Oh, that's a tricky question.
Well, if it's warm that day or hot, I'm sure the sun's there. It can be cloudy and hot.
Well, in January when we had the zero weather and it was still snowing and it was cloudy, was the sun there?
Sure.
But it wasn't hot. Yeah, I know that. I know that's exactly my point.
I think mine might go further away.
Yeah, but it wasn't further away than, it could have been closer a couple of days, a week later, or it could have been a little further, a few days before, but isn't the reality. When there's clouds up, doesn't mean it's gone. But you can argue if you want to.
I'm arguing.
Oh, okay. So here it is. You may have already had the dark night of the soul. That's mean when you have the crushing surrounding, and we all have had some of that. But when you're in that place, when you're all alone, and you don't know the way out, when finally it comes up and it's turned to God, no matter where you are in your station of life or in your spiritual connection or non-connection, that's when we need to move from that insane, dysregulated state and begin to move that direction. Does that make sense? Is that too murky? And when we start doing that, things start happening. And one of the things will happen is you'll start feeling differently, but you'll start letting go of the things that you have been holding on to that have actually made you worse, even though you tried to believe, catch the words, tried to believe that it made you better. Right, Will?
Yes, sir.
Any comments before I shut down? How was it? Too much? All right, we'll be here next week, and we'll be doing step 2. Same time, same station. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you peace. I like in other translations, let him smile upon you. Let his graciousness come upon you and give you peace. And of course, make healthy choices. Good night. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.